The SEC on CBS is back again this Saturday with a showdown between number 2 Alabama and number 13 Texas A&M. The Tide come in ranked second in the country and poised to make a serious run at another national championship. 13th ranked Texas A&M lost 7 straight to Alabama and haven't beaten a top 5 team in 6 seasons. For more, we welcome in CBS Sports college football writer Barrett Sallee and Sportsline analyst Emory Hunt. This Alabama team is loaded. They're the clear-cut favorite to win the SEC and have the 3rd best odds to win the national title. They rolled past Missouri last Saturday. Barrett, I want to start with you here. What's your evaluation of this Alabama squad?
It looks like they're on a completely different level. Like watching games throughout the course of the day and then flipping to Alabama, Missouri, it just looked different. They looked like Alabama of old, and really the only school that I've seen look that way this year other than Alabama is Clemson. And you look at what they were able to do offensively. They gave Mac Jones time, which was enormous, and he delivered the ball deep consistently. Completed 75% of the passes. I mean, look at that with Jalen Waddle. We know what he can do, but that ball was put on a dime between 2 defenders, and that's on Mac Jones as much as it is on Jalen Waddle. So I was really impressed with what they did offensively, was impressed with how they mixed different guys in the running game and how creative Steve Sarkisian got in that offense with that play calling. I don't worry about them letting Missouri back and score some points a little bit late. That was with the number 2s. This Alabama team, look, I picked them to win the SEC before the season. After the reshuffle, picked them again, and right now they clearly look like the best team in the SEC and one of the top 2 teams in the country.
Yeah, what I noticed in that Missouri game was the fact that when you're dealing with pandemic football like we are right now, you're looking at who can communicate well, who can get off the ground on a good start, and you look at the passing game. It looked like they were practicing and playing all season long. You look at the secondary. They were communicating really well. Guys were getting into shifts and doing what they had to do to shut down Missouri's passing game. So those 2 elements on the offensive line as well, they didn't miss a beat. So the communication was there. The continuity was there. Alabama looks like they are in midseason form already.
Well, last week we saw number 6 LSU fall to Mississippi State at home. Auburn picked up an impressive win over Kentucky. Texas A&M squeaked by Vanderbilt. Emory, when you look at the SEC West, which team in your mind poses the greatest threat to the Crimson Tide there?
It would have to be Auburn because you look at the continuity at quarterback with Bo Nix. I know Kellen Mond has been at A&M, it seems like forever, but Auburn showed the mettle to come back in that ball game, battled through some inconsistency and some adversity against Kentucky, got the win, and looked impressive in doing so. And Bo Nix is one of those guys that can give a Nick Saban defense problems because he's athletic. He can get out there and create plays, and you're going to have to do things like that and play above the X's and O's if you want to beat a team like Alabama. So I would say Auburn, to me, because of their unique scheme, because of the talent they have, and they have speed with Swartz at receiver, they can do some things to Alabama that a lot of teams on that side of the division can't.
Yeah, and Gus Malzahn's the most successful coach in the SEC against Nick Saban. So right there, Auburn has a good starting off point. And I was really impressed with Auburn with how they adjusted. I think in the first half against Kentucky, clearly that offensive line was an issue. And defensive line-wise, it was a little bit problematic too. They went in, they put more creative blitzes into the game plan. They made that offensive line comfortable with some basic schemes, lots of zone running plays. That really helped get that offense clicking, and it allowed Bo Nix to play off of that and find Seth Williams consistently. So I was really impressed with Auburn. I do think that they are Alabama's biggest threat. I'm very interested to see what happens this Saturday against Georgia because you didn't see them really settle into a number 1 running back. That's something that Gus Malzahn has done every single season, at least every single successful season that he's had on the Plains. It could be Tanks Bigsby, the freshman. DJ Williams, a sophomore, got in some playing time as well. Sean Shivers was the number 1 back, but he's more of a speed guy. So I think that's the one thing they have to figure out. But I think because Gus Malzahn's had some success and because they properly made adjustments at halftime and sort of figured out their own identity, because of those things, I think Auburn certainly is Alabama's biggest threat.
We touched on it briefly. Texas A&M didn't exactly impress last weekend against Vanderbilt. They're led, though, by senior quarterback Kellen Mond. And looking at his numbers, he appears to be regressing. He's just 3-9 in his career against ranked opponents. Barrett, what's your level of confidence that this Texas A&M squad has what it takes to compete for a national title this season?
0. And actually, I could try, if I could go less than 0, I would do that, because you mentioned Kellen Mond and regressing. It's not just that he's regressing. I think we all have seen that, and I guess Vanderbilt, you saw a little more of that, but it's the trust or lack thereof in the coaching staff that has sort of dwindled throughout the course of his career. That should be really alarming. You watch that game against Vanderbilt, he averaged 5 yards per completion. They didn't let him stretch the field. This dude's a senior. This dude has been around the SEC block. This dude has had some pretty good games against tough competition. Granted, they didn't turn out to be wins, but he has had success. And the confidence just isn't there. So if that's how Jimbo Fisher approached game 1 of the season, I can't imagine what's going to happen throughout the course of the season. And Kellen Mond starts getting figured out in that offense with those new receivers, has a book come out on it. I'm very disappointed with Texas A&M, not just with what happened against Vanderbilt, but the lack of trust that seemingly exists between Jimbo Fisher and Kellen Mond.
Yeah, and I was definitely not impressed with their offensive line. Vanderbilt was able to get pressure. I know they have a very good defensive front, but imagine what's going to happen against Nick Saban in that front seven of Alabama. That's going to be a problem. Plus, when you watch Kellen Mond, you see a guy that's thinking too much out there. He started his career with Kevin Sumlin, which is essentially point and shoot type passing, where, to use a basketball reference, just shoot threes and we'll get the rebound and you can shoot some more threes. And that's not the case with Jimbo Fisher's offense. You have to really scan the field, understand what you're seeing pre-snap, and also understand what you're seeing post-snap. And if you're thinking too much out there, you're holding the football, it's going to come out quick, it's going to come out short, or you're going to find yourself on your back a lot or under duress, which happened last week against Vanderbilt, and I'm sure is going to happen again against Alabama.
Well, just to tack on more, history is not on Texas A&M's side. They lost 8 straight in 11 of their last 12 to top 5 opponents. Their last top 5 win came 6 years ago. They're 2-7 in their last 9 true road games. Emory, what's the root of these issues for the Aggies?
I think it's a bigger issue, and it's when they decide to go into the SEC. Because once you decide to go into the SEC, you invite SEC programs into your home state to recruit. So you're not getting those dogs that you used to get back in the day with the wrecking crew defense. And we used to know Texas A&M to be a ground and pound offense that can rack up the offensive line recruits and backs that could just dot that I and just take it to the house. They don't get that now. They're going other places. So once they left the Big 12, went to the SEC, the recruiting changed, the dynamic changed, and they're now just become a team that's no different than Missouri, to put it lightly. So I think because of that, their dynamics change, and they still view themselves, and you're supposed to view yourselves high, they still view themselves as that Big 8, Big 12 team. But right now, they're just not getting the recruits that they thought they were going to get by joining the SEC, because those recruits now in Texas are going elsewhere.
Yeah, stylistically, they just don't fit right now because they're not winning at the line of scrimmage. And I think when we all talk about SEC speed, it's become kind of a joke outside of the SEC footprint. But the reason that's a thing is because of the speed and size of the interior defensive linemen. And those guys, they're not getting. Emory touched on it. It's a really good point. When they joined the SEC, I think they thought that they would dip into Louisiana more for recruits, dip into Georgia, dip into Florida. And really, that hasn't happened. So they're kind of stuck with these Texas guys. And no offense to the Texas players, but they don't really fit what Texas A&M needs to do. So I think Kevin Sumlin tried to piece it together. He was all right. Jimbo Fisher, I think, understands that there is a problem, but he hasn't made those recruiting inroads either in the places that they need it in order to be successful. So those issues, I think, combined with the fact that they really haven't had a stable quarterback situation since Johnny Manziel, really has kind of kept them in neutral, because you look at Jimbo's first 2 years, they're Kevin Sumlin years too. You're getting nothing different from Jimbo Fisher through 2 years, and I think it's not just a personnel deficiency that existed when Jimbo got there, but it's the inability to break down walls that they thought they could break down when they joined the SEC.
All right, guys. Well, Alabama's a favorite by 16.5. The total 51 and a hook. Barrett, what's your play in this matchup?
Yeah, I'll take Alabama, and I'll go under. This is a dial-a-score game for Alabama, and I know Texas A&M fans don't want to hear that, but they'll be able to own the line of scrimmage. The defensive front versus Alabama's offensive line is going to be interesting, but I think Alabama certainly knows what to expect in that department. I expect Alabama to put up 35, 40 points, and then basically put it into cruise control mode because they don't want to get anybody hurt. They know Georgia's coming up in a couple weeks, and they want to make sure they get out of that game as safe and as healthy as possible. At the same time, if A&M can't move the ball against Vanderbilt, they can't move the ball against Alabama. So I'll take Alabama. I'll lay those points, and I will take the under because Nick Saban likes to put it in cruise control early, especially against halfway decent teams.
Yeah, I'm following Barrett. I'm laying those points with Alabama. I think what the difference was in Missouri and why that number didn't favor Alabama, in my opinion, was the fact that they had Roundtree in the backfield. They can run the ball a little bit. They can create some chunk plays and find themselves working down the field. Because of the ineffective offensive line play I saw from Texas A&M against Vanderbilt and their lack of a run game, you're going to see a lot of 3-and-outs. And I think those added possessions will end up being touchdowns for Alabama, more so than what we saw last week against Missouri. So, yeah, they'll win, and I think they'll get a bigger lead than they had against the Tigers, and therefore I would take the over as well, along with the spread.
A little split decision there. Barrett Sallee and Emory Hunt talking all things SEC on CBS. We appreciate you guys. And taking a look here, Alabama against Texas A&M in their past 5 games as ranked opponents. A stark difference, the number of wins, points per game, and turnovers between the two. Alabama looks primed for a national championship run. Next in their path is number 13 Texas A&M this Saturday on CBS at 3:30 Eastern. Gary Danielson will be on the call with Brad Nessler as the Crimson Tide look to win on their home field for the 32nd time in their last 33 tries. We now welcome in Gary Danielson. 3 painfully long years have passed since Nick Saban last hoisted a national championship trophy. They're currently ranked 2nd in the country and really no shortage of talent. What's the ceiling for this Alabama team in your mind?
Well, that's a good question. I think when you watch them, you have to believe that their defense probably is as athletic and as deep, maybe going all the way back to that great defense in 2016 where they were just loaded with NFL players over the next 3 drafts. So they're really loaded now. They have a little more depth than they had last year. Getting Dylan Moses back at linebacker gives them that leadership and allows all the young players to play a little faster because he's making all the decisions. So besides a little experience in the secondary, and to be honest, nobody feels sorry for Alabama because their inexperience are players that are 5 stars. So they're pretty loaded on defense. And the way Mac Jones is continuing to improve, got to say, it's going to be a big upset for them to lose a game. And you're looking at maybe only 2 or 3 teams in the whole country. Now, 2 of them might be in the SEC that can even play with this Alabama team.
Well, looking at Texas A&M, people think they're poised to take that next step in year 3 under Jimbo Fisher. Right. But last week they barely beat Vanderbilt as a 30.5-point favorite. Gary, how concerned are you about what you saw last week?
I am. I think A&M, they progressed. And this was the year that, Jimbo thought he had his team together. Now, they've been really stung with opt-outs. They have 6 of them on this team. 2 of them have receivers that Kellen Mond was really counting on. So the team is a bit of a work in progress right now. They seem to have lost their confidence a bit. And, the change in the schedule, I think, affected A&M more than any other team. They could have started very easily playing teams that they were going to just walk over. I think now, so early in the season, to have to travel to Tuscaloosa is a big shock for them. We'll see. Now, they turned the ball over a little bit. They do have a veteran quarterback, but to me, they'd have to play a Mississippi State type game to defeat this Alabama team. And even in that rate, LSU helped a lot. It's hard for me to see how, this Alabama team will be helping A&M in this stadium.
Jimbo Fisher is 18-9 as the head coach of Texas A&M. Gary, how do you evaluate his time so far with the Aggies?
I think it was a rebuild. I think it was something that he knew he had to retool it. This was a spread offensive football team. He wanted to make them tougher, stronger on the line of scrimmage, run the ball when they had to run the ball, and I think they are doing that much better than they have in the past. They just seem to be making too many self-inflicted wounds. Now, they have a veteran offensive line, but they seem to jump off sides. They got a veteran quarterback. He turns the ball over twice and has fumble exchanges with his running back. I think if his players on offense just do what they're capable of, they stay in the game. For example, he likes to slow it down. Now, last week they only ran 55 plays against Vanderbilt. The way Alabama moves the ball around, you would see that slowing the ball down would be very tough against this Alabama team. No matter what, they have to hang on to it. When they throw it to them, they have to catch it. And making those routine plays is what Jimbo really needs his team to do this week.
The Aggies certainly have their work cut out for them. Alabama just can't seem to lose on their home turf. Before losing to LSU last season, they won 31 straight. What makes this team just so hard to beat at Bryant-Denny Stadium, Gary?
Well, they're tough to beat anywhere, number one. And then at home, everybody walks in there and it's quite an intimidating stadium. Everybody knows the history when you walk in there. But for the most part, they're just better than everybody. It's an upset to beat them. They 1 through 85, they're just really deep, really strong. When they have players turn pro, they have new ones ready to go right behind them. They're well coached, disciplined. If you look around college football this year, a lot of players are opting out. None at Alabama. They've all come back. They're focused. They're ready to go. And I think last year's taste of not getting into the playoffs and not getting in a chance to go for the national championship again has really got them geared up for this football season.
Just what Alabama needs, a chip on their shoulder. All right, it's Mac Jones against Kellen Mond, number 2 against number 13. How do you expect this one to play out on Saturday afternoon?
I think if this good A&M defense, and it is pretty strong. Now, Mike Elko's defensive game plan is always to get his safeties to be an extra guy in the box and control the running game. Alabama loves it with their offensive line and Najee Harris. They love to run the ball first, play action pass with the big plays after it. If they can keep Alabama from hitting those 45-yard, 55-yard bombs down the middle after a fake to Najee Harris, their defense might have a chance. Not likely. But if they do, they have to be very disciplined at the safety position. I think that's the key to the game for Texas A&M on defense. The safeties have to be involved in the run game, but not get beat for the passing game. And that is much easier said than done.
Absolutely. Well, Gary Danielson, we appreciate so much the time looking ahead to the SEC on CBS game.
My pleasure. Thanks.
You can catch Gary Danielson, Brad Nessler, and Jamie Erdahl bringing you the Texas A&M against number 2 Alabama game this Saturday at 3:30 Eastern on CBS.